Imagine this, you're moving into Kileleshwa and you have this rental unit. So it's a 3-bedroom apartment that goes for 15 million shillings cash if you buy 100% cash. And then you also have the option to rent this unit at 75,000 shillings per month. So you have two options, either to buy this unit at 100% cash or to rent that unit and invest your 15 million in a cash generating asset like an infrastructure bond that fetches a coupon of 13%. So this 13% coupon rate gives you an annual income of 1.95 million, which translates to a monthly income of 162,500 shillings per month. So you can use the 2.5 thousand shillings per month to offset your rent expense of 75,000 shillings per month. So which option will you go for? Will you rather invest the 15 million shillings cash in acquiring the unit and own the unit, or will you rather invest your money in cash generating assets and use the income from these cash generating assets to actually meet your rent expenditure? So this is the biggest debate in personal finance, the debate between home ownership and renting. And most people usually get it wrong about renting in this debate. So the two things that most people usually get wrong about renting is that most people assume that whenever you are renting, you are actually wasting money, or maybe you are actually making your landlord richer, and you could actually be saving yourself the rent expense by actually owning the home. But then there is more than meets the eye. So we are going to be delving into the numbers and actually comparing the two options between home ownership and renting and see which one actually makes the most financial sense. So let's get right into it. So why does this debate between home ownership versus renting actually matter? So if you look at the foundational level, for most people, we want to stop having to worry about having to meet our rental expenses. We want to be in a position whereby we never have to worry about failing to meet our rental expenses. And that's why most people prefer home ownership, because once they own a home, once they build a home, they actually stop worrying about having to meet a monthly rental expense. So they are looking for what you call security, or maybe stability in terms of their families, in terms of their household as well. So if you look at how you can be able to solve this problem, so you can solve this problem using two ways. So number one, you can either build or own a home, but then number two, you can also invest your money in cash generating assets that can help you to meet your monthly rental income into perpetuity. You don't have to take expensive mortgages, or maybe you don't have to actually build a home or buy a home, so that you never actually have to worry about rent again. Whenever it comes to the conversation between home ownership versus renting, most Kenyans usually get these two things wrong. So number one, most Kenyans falsely believe that whenever you are renting, you're actually wasting money, and you could actually save yourself the rent expense by owning a home or by building a home. But then if you look at the grand scheme of things, whenever you choose to rent, or maybe whenever you choose to buy a home, you're not saving yourself the monthly rent expense. You're actually foregoing the opportunity to own cash generating assets that you can use to meet your rental expenses. So renting does not mean that you're wasting money. You could actually be investing your money in cash generating assets that can help you meet your rental expenses. Then number two, most Kenyans falsely believe that whenever you are renting, you're actually making your landlord richer at the expense of making yourself poorer. But then if you look at the statistics of how real estate performs, you will even be surprised, and you can even argue the situation to be the other way around. So real estate has two return elements. It has what we call the rental yield, it has the capital gain. So the rental yield is calculated by taking the annual rental income, you divide by the market value of this property. So for example, in our situation here, we had a house or maybe a home of 75,000 in rent per month. You multiply that by 12 and then you divide by the market value of the house, which was 15 million, then you get the rental yield. So capital appreciation, or what you call capital gains, is just the change in price, or maybe the change in value of this unit at any particular moment in time. So let's say, for example, at the beginning of the year, this unit was going for 14.5 million. Then at the end of the year, the same unit is going for 15 million. That's what you call capital appreciation, or maybe a capital gain. So if you look at how real estate performs in Kenya, so most rental properties, whenever it comes to rental yield, they average between 4 to 6%. And then whenever it comes to capital gains, they average between 1 to 3% per annum. So obviously you have outliers, and the biggest factor whenever it comes to real estate is actually location. So depending on the location of this project, the return elements could be different. So obviously you have outliers that maybe have a significantly higher return than what I've mentioned, because I've used the averages. But then on average in Kenya, finding a real estate project with a net return of more than 10%, incorporating both the rental yield and the capital gain, is quite hard. Though, like I mentioned, we have outliers like maybe commercial real estate, like as well maybe Airbnb, so maybe other furnished units. But in the grand scheme of things, or maybe on average, Getting a unit in Kenya that has a total return element of more than 10% is actually hard. But on the other hand, if you look at how other asset classes, like maybe T-bonds, like maybe stocks, like maybe special funds, you can easily have your portfolio returning more than the 10%. So arguing that maybe your renting makes your landlord richer can actually be the other way around, because you may be renting their unit, which is giving them a return of 10%, while your portfolio at the other end is giving you a return of, let's say, 14 or even 15%. And your landlord could be argued to actually have made a better decision by not owning that property, but by actually investing in other assets that can give him a better return than the rental property, maybe than the property he's actually renting to you. So renting does not make your landlord richer. It can be argued in either way. So depending with the performance of that real estate property versus other asset classes, it can be argued whether you're making your landlord richer, or you actually or it can also be argued that you're actually in a position whereby you're planning yourself to actually capitalize on the good deals on the real estate market, so that maybe you can rent the house and as well invest your money in other assets that can actually fetch you better returns in the financial markets. So get those two things right. When it comes to looking at the two decisions at an individual level, both have their own disadvantages and their own advantages. So if we start with renting, so renting is quite flexible because number one, you can move between houses at any particular moment in time. You can move between different regions at any particular moment in time. But then again, it also has its own disadvantages. So number one, rent hikes can happen. So let's say, for example, you have these investments that you have made. So how do you cope with rent hikes? So obviously you can incorporate asset classes, other asset classes in your portfolio. So in this portfolio of yours that you are using to meet your rental expenses, the 15 million, you don't have to necessarily invest the 15 million in a bond, because maybe bonds don't scale out of capital appreciation. So maybe you can add a little bit of stocks just to maybe give your portfolio the chance to cope with rental hikes. Then as well, you can also maybe deposit more money in this portfolio so that maybe it can cope with future rental hikes as well. But then in the grand scheme of things, you're just trying to position yourself in a way that you actually use this money, or maybe this income from this cash generating asset, to actually offset majority, if not the entirety, of the rental income. So maybe rental hike is not something that you have to worry about a lot, because maybe remember, with a monthly average of 162,500, the rental expense was only 75,000. So you still have a huge room before that rental expenditure can actually be hiked to meet what we are actually making per month. Then number three, maybe whenever you decide to own a home, maybe home prices will have appreciated at a higher rate than maybe what your investments will have grown at. So depending on how the market of houses, maybe the market of real estate in that particular region, compared to how your investments do, there can be a huge discrepancy, or maybe there can be a huge difference, which can leave you at the negative side, maybe at the losing side. Then when it comes to home ownership, it also has its advantages. So number one, it gives you the security and the stability in that you never have to worry about rent again. You have locked in the current home prices. But then again, it also has its disadvantages. So number one, you may have to maybe take an expensive mortgage for you to actually achieve, maybe to actually own this home. So if you look at the cost of mortgages in Kenya, it's quite expensive, and most mortgages are actually not recommended. So I actually did a video on mortgages that I'm going to link here, so you can look at that to understand maybe why mortgages aren't considered to be 100% a good financial decision in our Kenyan markets. Then the last thing, you're actually tying a huge portion of your capital. You know, not many Kenyans will be able to raise 15 million for the entirety of their lives, or maybe if they are being able to raise it, maybe they are going to be tying a huge amount of their capital in an illiquid asset. So that may affect their portfolio in different ways. Then again, also in the huge debate whenever it comes to adding the residential home to your portfolio. So some people try to consider it as an asset that they can add to their portfolio. Some people try to consider the houses as a liability. So that also impacts how you calculate your net worth and also your overall growth of your portfolio as well, because some people consider how their residential homes in their portfolio being their net worth, other people don't include it. So it's majorly a personal decision, but then the decision that you make actually affects your net worth and also your portfolio growth over any particular moment in time. So we have looked at both decisions at an individual level, and we have tried to compare them. So that's between home ownership versus renting. So you have seen that most people have a negative attitude, or maybe a negative bias towards renting, because they falsely believe that maybe renting is a waste of money, that they could be saving themselves the rental expense by owning a home. Then number two, you have seen the other false belief, whereby most people imagine that, or maybe falsely believe that renting actually makes their landlord richer at the expense of making themselves is poor, which is not the case. It can actually be argued in either case. For the two decisions between homeownership versus renting, if you try to do simulations and compare the two, even backtesting different portfolios, there's no clear winner between which of the two decisions is actually better in terms of financial numbers if you're trying to analyze the two decisions financially, because if here you'll be trying to compare two things. So the performance of houses, or the performance of real estate over a period of time, and the performance of the money that you have invested in these cash generating assets over a period of time. So depending with the market, the conditions of the market, and also the period that you invest, these two markets have tended to maybe perform differently. So you don't have a clear-cut winner between the person who chooses to rent or maybe the person who chooses to own a home. In terms of financial numbers, in terms of calculations, no one is the clear-cut winner. So there is no superior decision between the two, and no one can have 100% certainty which one is going to win in the long term. So in the next 20-30 years, no one has a clear-cut answer as to which of the two is going to actually outdo the other. So that's number one. Then number two, the decision between homeownership versus renting is actually not a numbers game. In most times, it's not a numbers game. It's actually a psychological decision, maybe what you call behavioral science. So most people are trying to actually stop looking at the numbers, but look at then what works for them. So do you prefer security or do you prefer flexibility? Then again, if you look at the grand scheme of things, the discussion between homeownership versus renting is actually a middle income quagmire, because if you look at the people who are on the top of the pyramid, the high income earners, the wealthy guys, they're not debating this, because for them they can afford to own whatever houses that they want, and they can pay 100% cash, and they can own whatever investment that they want. Then the poor people, maybe the people who are at the bottom of the pyramid, these guys have no option of owning a house because maybe they can't afford them, so they can only be able to rent whatever units that they can afford at that particular moment in time. So the middle income guys are the people who are trying to debate, so should I maybe use the limited resources that I have to either own a home, or maybe should I be renting, and which one makes more money for me, or maybe which one tries to save much money for me in the grand scheme of things. So it's not a clear-cut answer. It depends with how markets perform. And then number two, it's not a financial numbers game. It's actually a psychological decision whereby you're trying to see what matters for you in your life. Do you prefer stability? Do you prefer flexibility? Do you prefer to own a home? Maybe do you prefer cash generating assets? So you can use the two and you can still actually achieve the same results at the end of time. So that's it on home ownership versus renting. So get your numbers right, get your thinking right, get the facts right. So most people usually trash talk renting. So the next time your friends are telling you that maybe it's time for you to stop renting, maybe to stop living in an apartment, and maybe live in your own house, tell them that maybe renting is not as bad as they make it seem, or be as they paint it. It can actually be argued to be a good financial decision, the same way owning a home can argue to be a good financial decision. So let me know what you think about the two decisions in the comment section, and let's keep the conversation going. So that's it from me. See you in the next one.